Does IUL work? Welcome, I'm Doug Andrew. This is my son, Aaron Andrew. He's one of the top IUL specialists in America. If you've watched very many of my educational episodes on three-dimensional wealth, you will understand one of my favorite financial instruments, bar none, is a max-funded indexed universal life insurance policy. But it must be structured correctly and funded properly to perform as illustrated. And so oftentimes when people come to us, they want to optimize their assets, minimize taxes, and be able to prepare for a comfortable retirement or some other long-term financial goal. And so when they understand that a properly structured maximum funded index universal life policy can accommodate money to accumulate it tax-free, then be able to access that money totally income tax-free somewhere down the road. And then when they ultimately die, whatever's left behind usually blossoms and transfers income tax-free, is done under three sections of the Internal Revenue Code, Section 72E, 7702, and 101A. So we usually then show them an illustration repositioning assets that they want to set aside over a certain time period. And so an illustration is created. What if you were to fund this in 5 years or 10 years, and then at some point in time start taking out tax-free income? And so sometimes people will say, well, come on, this sounds too good to be true. Do you have some illustrations of actual clients who have achieved what you're illustrating here? And of course, we have other financial advisors, naysayers that say, well, I've never seen any of these policies perform as illustrated. So the purpose of this series is to show you numerous examples of how clients have actually outperformed the illustration. So we have a CPA, very conservative and very detailed, that you met, what, in
2009.
2009. So as of the recording of this episode in 2022, it's been about, 13 years?
Yep, we're in, the 12th year is the one we're going to show, but we're about to get into the 13th year now. Yeah.
So Aaron is going to show you what the performance has been, what was illustrated, and how it's actually outperformed what was illustrated. And then I'm going to come back on because I want you to study how you can apply these strategies in your particular set of circumstances. And I want to gift you a copy of our most recent 300-page best-selling book called The Laser Fund: How to Diversify and Create the Foundation for a Tax-Free Retirement, like you're going to see this client has done. So take it away, Aaron.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this client. So this is a CPA, and of course, CPAs are well known to, people put them on a pedestal that they know all, and not all CPAs understand this, but this CPA does. So this CPA came to me, and he had read one of our books, like the Laser Fund, for example, and came and said, hey, I want one of these max-funded index universal life policies with the guarantees of zero that you can't lose. Zero's the hero. And with an insurance company that's been around for 150 years, with the safety, the guarantees, the protection, the death benefit that comes along for the ride, and then also to be able to take out tax-free income via loans down the road, like Doug was saying a minute ago, my father. So now let's take a look at this client. So he came to me, very detailed, super detailed client. And yeah, we meet every year and we look at the annual statements and we see how the policy is performing and so forth. But we looked at two different examples. So back in 2009, in about July when he went forward to the policy, we went forward to this contract, and here's one way we looked at it. He wanted to put in $400,000. So you can see he wanted to put in about $399,000, just shy of $400,000. At age 56, his death benefit was $1.1 million was what the death benefit amount was going to be. And in this example, we showed putting in the maximum amount under tax code so we don't create a MEC, so it's not taxable. This helps it keep it tax-free. We put in the maximum for 2 years, and then we put in $30,000 to max it out until year 10, the last bit of $29,000, and that maxes it out, the max you can pay in to have this structured properly in this example. Now, he could do it a little faster though. So he says, I know I can do this, but he might be able to do this. So this is what's so cool about the flexibility is another example that we looked at, and he did somewhere in between this. So this is kind of three examples in this one. Well, let's go down and we'll look at the main one right here. So in this example, we showed it maxing it out over 6 years. This is the max he could do, 78, 78, 78 in year 6, and the last little bit of 9,400 in year 6 to max it out. Same death benefit. This is the same policy. So because it's not a whole life, it's an indexed universal life in this example, he can have lots of flexibility. So he can decide through the years, do I have the money? Can I maximum fund it? Or take a little bit longer, still max it out, but max it out over 10 years, which was this example, maxing it out over a 10-year period. He did somewhere in between, all right? He did somewhere in between where he did mostly over the 6 years, I believe, but he might have taken into the seventh or 8th or 9th year in this example. So if we look at his example here, let's look at 2000 or 10 years into it. So in 10 years, he should have had 473 from what we illustrated. Now again, these things could perform at lower than illustrated or more than illustrated. We're showing some examples that illustrated better than what we had projected. So this client, for example, let's go back up here to the top. And in these examples that we ran, I ran 3 examples for him. So some companies, for example, this one, we ran an example of a scenario 1, 2, and 3. And in scenario number 1, I ran 10% in a 5-year account, a 10% illustrated rate. We showed 9.5 in another 5-year account, 8% in a 1-year account, and a little bit in the fixed. So we did 30%, 30, 30, and 10 in the fixed is what we had illustrated back then. So 60% of the money we're showing 9.5 to 10% illustrated rate. In scenario 2, we showed a little bit lower rate, 9%, 8.5, and 7. And over here in scenario 3, we showed 8, 7.5, and 6, showing a more conservative example, more aggressive. So this is the more aggressive kind of middle that we showed. Again, this is back in 2009, about 12 to 13 years ago. So looking at these examples, this does not show the accumulation value, just the surrender value for those that are a little more familiar. But in this example, in 10 years, if we funded it like this, we should have had in the 10th year 473, 446, or 421 in those 3 different scenarios. So 473, 446, 421. In 2019, by the end of the policy year here, this is showing in July of 2019, he had $558,000 inside the policy. So once again, this is the annual policy statement for an indexed universal life. This is the client. I'm the advisor or producer on this. So in this example, he's averaged, by the way, 9.25% is what he's averaged since the beginning of this policy. But this last year, well, not this year, but this is in 2019, he had earned $51,000 of interest, $9,000 came out in policy charges. He $1.1 million of death benefit is his insurance amount, but $558,000. So again, $558,000. We had projected at those 3 different examples that in year 10, there'd be no surrender charge, so the surrender value would be the same as the accumulation at that point. He'd have 473, 446, and 421. And again, how much does he have? $558,000, which is way more than 100, more than 100,000 in these examples in the comparison. So we are way ahead of schedule. But if he would have maxed it out, I'm a little detailed, so we're getting there. If he had earned the high returns here, the highest return examples that we could have showed, like 10%, 9%, and 8%, and if he would have maxed it out all the way by year 10, he would have had $535,000. So $535,000 by year 10. He has, again, right now, $558,000 inside the policy right now. So we're ahead of schedule. It's pretty cool. So we are ahead of schedule of what we had illustrated back in 2009. Even though some of those accounts, the caps have come down through the years because interest rates have come down through the years, we've still have outperformed what we projected, even with those very high projections, because the policy's done very well still. Really, really good. And you can see he's got a lot of money here in the 2-year account right now. We've kind of had money in different accounts, some of the 5-year. Now we've kind of transitioned to be more conservative. What we do is we manage these through the years. He's got money in the 2-year and not money in the 5-year accounts anymore that are a little bit more long-term. Well, let's fast forward to right now. So the annual statement, almost a year ago at the recording of this video, we're still a month away from his anniversary date in July. So this is July of 2021. And this statement, he earned $95,000 of interest through that last policy year. He's got 650. So his fees have come down. He's down to $3,000 in fees now. So his fees go down as he's gotten older in this because of the way the policy's structured. So he's got only $3,000 of charges coming out now a year. He's got $654,000 in the policy. So where would we be at that point? The one that was maximum funded, to get the benefit of the doubt of where we're at here, we've got to go down. I got to go down to page 24 for a second here, because I got to show one without loans, because this CPA is not needed to take out loans yet. So we showed him taking out, in this example, there's a few different ones, but in this example, we showed him starting to take out $56,000. Okay, but right now, last year in July of 2021 is year 12. He should have, under the projections, $630,000. That's illustrating 10%, 9.5%, and 8% illustrated rates in those different accounts that we used. Okay, so $630,000 is where we should be at. Now we are at $654,000. So we're at $654,000 instead of $630,000. So we're ahead of schedule by about $24,000. We're ahead of schedule because the policies performed better than we illustrated, even at those high examples. Now, if I show scenario 2 and 3 that you saw a minute ago, we are way ahead of schedule on those two examples that we ran for him. Now, let's fast forward to right now. This statement is as of April. The last quarterly statement is as of April of 2022. Okay, at the time of this recording, this is June, the beginning of June of 2022. So we're about to hit his anniversary statement in another month, but right now his policy has got 667 in it. So we're at 667, we should be around 630. But here's the neat thing with this policy right now. We've averaged 9% in this since the beginning. Okay, but if we look down here, we have got, and by the way, just to show you that he has maxed it out, there's the max he can pay into the policy, all right, called the guideline single premium. That's the max he can pay in is $399 like we showed, and he has maxed it out. So he has maxed, he's done well. He's been, maximum funding the policy and so forth. And again, the policy was dated back in July of 2009. But what I wanted to show you in this example is we are about to hit some 2-year accounts. So you guys start to understand these things. Right now, the S&P has been pretty volatile through this year of 2022. But as of right now, he has a lot of money on these 2 dates. So with indexing, I know we don't have time to get into all the details, but those that have watched other videos, with indexing, you're linked to an index. We're linked to the S&P on these 2-year accounts. He has all of his money now in 2-year accounts. The S&P in those dates, back in 2020, the S&P was 3,300 and about 3,380 basically back then. Right now, at the time of this recording, we're at about 4,000 or so where the S&P is right now. And so if the S&P stays flat for the next couple of months, which of course it's not, it's going to go up and down a little bit. But if it stays flat, he has got in these 2 dates coming up, 68,000 and 196,000 of values of money that is on those dates that's going to get a return. So if the market stays flat over the next couple months, because we don't know what it's going to do, these 2 accounts will earn about 60 grand of interest, what we calculated right now, where the S&P is today, and where it could be in another couple months. He could earn another 60 grand of interest, and we would see that in another couple quarters of the statement, that he would have another $60,000 added to that number right there. So basically, bottom line, we have outperformed what we illustrated, even though we showed 3 examples. So if we go back here, we showed 3 examples here of a scenario 1, 2, and 3. High interest rates, 10, 9.5, 8, 9, 8.5, and 7, and 8, 7.5, and 6. These 3 different scenarios, putting 30% in these 2 accounts, 30% in this 1-year account, and 10% in the fixed. In that example, we outperformed all 3, even the high interest rate example. We outperformed that through the 10th year and even through the 12th year, and we're on track to still outperform it by the 13th year coming up here in a couple months.
So thank you, Aaron. It's interesting. We have a lot of CPAs and engineers that absolutely love max funded IUL and laser funds because they're so technical. And they're thrilled because they go through these with a fine-tooth comb, and they're just so picky about so many things, and yet they see the performance, and they love it when we outperform the illustrated rate, even though you illustrated some at 10 and at 9. So hopefully this is giving you insights into opportunities where, yeah, IUL really does work. It's the real deal. And if you want to study more about it, and if you have not claimed your free copy of this book, here's how you can do it. You simply go to laserfund.com, LESERfund.com, or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling, have some skin in the game, and I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I will pay for the book and fire it out. Now, Aaron is a co-author with your other brother, Emran, and this has been flying off of our warehouse shelves. Why? Because it's 300 pages of charts, graphs, explanations, 14 chapters on this left brain side of the book. If you're more of a right brain learner, you learn by stories. You flip it over and read this one. This has 62 actual client stories and examples. So this will teach you how to diversify and create the foundation for a tax-free retirement. And hopefully, when you're in there, you can take advantage of picking the brains of a IUL specialist like Aaron to see how you can employ these strategies in your particular set of circumstances and see illustrations. And we would love to sort of under-promise and then over-deliver for you for your brighter future, for any of your financial goals.
Now, one thing to add to that real quick is on this side of the book he was just talking about, I just recently updated chapter 6, which explains exactly these 5-year accounts, the 2-year account I was explaining. It goes into detail in chapter 6 about the 5-year account, the 2-year account, and some extra features with multipliers that aren't even in this example that can get the returns up another 3, 4, 5, 6% historically. Yeah, chapter 6 was just updated with a lot of this content on how this indexing works right there.
Yeah, there have been some clients because of what we call rebalancing. When you meet with him annually, you're tweaking this. And this is why from March of 2020 to March of 2021, some people switched over at your recommendation to a 1-year point-to-point with no cap, and they locked in gains of 61.33%. You had a client that had 850 some odd thousand in March of 2020 without adding a dime. 1 year later, he had $1,382,000, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He made over $500,000 tax-free. So you have no idea what kinds of opportunities. That's what he's talking about. We have updated the book, chapter 6. Check it out.